Science fiction changed forever in 1977 when Star Wars exploded into theaters and rewrote the rules of blockbuster cinema. It gave us myth, spectacle, and a new cinematic religion. But here is the uncomfortable truth. Not every great sci-fi film was embraced the same way. Some were rejected, some confused audiences, some lost millions. And yet, over time, many of these so-called failures revealed deeper ideas, sharper philosophy, and more daring artistry. Tonight, we begin with a film that once stumbled at the box office, but now towers over the genre. When Blade Runner arrived in 1982, it was not welcomed as a masterpiece. It was considered slow, confusing, visually overwhelming. The audiences expecting action in the tradition of space fantasy instead found themselves trapped in a rain-soaked future where the hero barely spoke and the villains asked questions about the soul. The film earned modest returns against its production cost and was quickly labeled a disappointment. Critics were divided. Some admired its look but dismissed its pacing. Others found it emotionally cold, and yet time has reversed that verdict. Directed by Ridley Scott and based loosely on Philip K. Dick's novel, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, Blade Runner does something radical. It treats science fiction not as adventure, but as existential inquiry. The future Los Angeles it presents is not triumphant. It is decaying. Corporations dominate the skyline. Humanity is blurred with machinery. Our artificial beings, known as replicants, are manufactured to serve and discarded when inconvenient. The premise alone carries more moral tension than many heroic space epics. Harrison Ford's Rick Deckard is not a chosen one. He is not a farm boy destined for greatness. He is tired, morally uncertain, hired to retire replicants who display too much humanity. The emotional core of the film belongs not to the hunter, but to the hunted. Rutger Hauer's Roy Batty is a synthetic being who feels fear, rage, longing, and ultimately, grace. His final monologue about memories lost, like tears in rain, reframes the entire narrative. The artificial creation becomes more compassionate than his human oppressor. Visually, the film changed cinema. Its layered neon cityscape created the blueprint for cyberpunk. Countless films, games, and an anime would borrow its aesthetic. From The Matrix to Ghost in the Shell, the DNA traces back here. The production design alone carries more imagination than many effects-driven franchises. But what truly elevates Blade Runner beyond conventional space opera is its thematic depth. It asks questions that linger long after the credits roll. What defines a human being? Memory? Empathy? Birth? Mortality. If an artificial mind can fear death, then what moral right does humanity have to extinguish it? These are philosophical dilemmas rarely confronted in blockbuster storytelling. Multiple cuts of the film were released over the decades. The original theatrical version imposed studio-mandated narration and a forced hopeful ending. Later editions restored Scott's darker vision and ambiguity. With each revision, the film gained stature. What was once considered a misfire is now routinely ranked among the greatest science fiction films ever made. Blade Runner did not ignite toy lines or theme parks. It did something more lasting. It challenged the audience, and in doing so, it proved that science fiction can be poetry written in neon and rain. When 2001, A Space Odyssey premiered in 1968, many audience members walked out. They expected rockets, alien invasions, maybe a clear hero to follow. Instead, they were given silence, long stretches of silence, classical music echoing through the vacuum of space, a black monolith that refused to explain itself. Critics were divided. Some called it pretentious, others labeled it incomprehensible. For a time, it was treated as an expensive curiosity rather than a crowd-pleasing triumph. But history had other plans. Directed by Stanley Kubrick and developed with author Arthur C. Clarke, 2001 did not just tell a story. It redefined what cinematic science fiction could be. From the famous Dawn of Man sequence to the hypnotic docking ballet set to the Blue Danube, the film unfolds like a visual symphony. Dialogue is sparse because it does not need constant explanation. The images carry the weight. At the center of the film lies HAL 9000, a calm, polite artificial intelligence who begins to malfunction. HAL is not a cackling villain. He is rational, soft-spoken, almost childlike in his fear of being disconnected. When he pleads for his life as astronaut Dave Bowman shuts him down, the moment is chilling not because of violence, but because of empathy. We feel for a machine. And that alone marks a shift in how science fiction approaches consciousness. Unlike heroic space sagas, 2001 avoids easy triumph. There is no rebellion overthrowing an empire, no destiny fulfilled with a laser sword. Instead, the film meditates on evolution, technology, and humanity's fragile place in the universe. The final Stargate sequence abandons traditional narrative altogether, plunging viewers into a psychedelic journey that feels closer to philosophy than entertainment. Technically, the film was revolutionary. Its practical effects, rotating sets, and meticulous realism influenced every space film that followed. Even the sense of grounded physics in later blockbusters owes a debt to Kubrick's insistence on authenticity. While Star Wars made science fiction accessible to mass audiences, 2001 demanded patience and reflection. It does not offer simple myth. It offers cosmic mystery. It asks viewers to confront the possibility that humanity is only a small chapter in a vast evolutionary arc. What once confused audiences now stands as a towering intellectual achievement. 2001 did not merely imagine the future, it dared to imagine what comes after us. When Dune premiered in 1984, it carried enormous expectations. The novel by Frank Herbert was already considered one of the most complex and beloved works in science fiction literature. The studio poured significant money into production. Director David Lynch was handed a massive canvas. What arrived in theaters was dense, strange, and uncompromising. Audiences struggled to follow its political factions, prophetic visions, and unfamiliar terminology. The box office numbers fell short of expectations, and the film was labeled a disappointment almost immediately. Yet, beneath its uneven pacing and studio-mandated edits lies a work far more ambitious than a traditional space adventure. Dune is not built on a simple hero's journey. It is built on religion, ecology, imperial politics, and the manipulation of prophecy. Paul Atreides is not just a farm boy discovering hidden powers. He is a figure molded by generations of genetic planning and myth-making. The Bene Gesserit order has seeded belief systems across planets to control populations. Empires rise and fall over control of a single resource. Power is economic before it is mystical. The desert planet Arrakis feels alive. The sandworms are not mere monsters, but symbols of ecological balance. The spice that fuels interstellar travel also expands consciousness. The film dares to intertwine environmental commentary with messianic destiny. It is grand, operatic, and philosophical in ways that many mainstream science fiction films avoid. Visually, the production design is striking. Gothic architecture merges with futuristic machinery. The Baron Harkonnen is grotesque and theatrical. The costumes and sets lean into Baroque excess rather than sleek minimalism. Even when the narrative falters, the imagery lingers. Dune failed because it demanded too much from its audience. It required attention. It offered no hand-holding. Over time, however, viewers have revisited it and found layers that were once overlooked. It may not have achieved perfect execution, but its scale of ideas surpasses simple rebellion tales. Where space fantasy often celebrates adventure, Dune questions power itself. That ambition alone secures its place among the most daring science fiction films ever made. Released the same year as E.T., The Thing arrived at the worst possible moment. Audiences were embracing warmth and optimism in their science fiction. Instead, they were confronted with isolation, paranoia, and body horror. The box office returns were underwhelming. Critics initially dismissed it as excessive and nihilistic. For a time, it was considered a misfire in director John Carpenter's career. Today, it is regarded as a masterpiece of tension. Set in an Antarctic research station, the film traps a group of scientists with a shape-shifting alien capable of perfectly imitating any living organism. The horror does not come from flashy spectacle. It comes from distrust. Anyone could be the creature. Friendship becomes suspicion. Every conversation carries threat. Kurt Russell's MacReady is not a chosen savior. He is flawed and unsure. Leadership emerges out of necessity rather than destiny. The blood test sequence remains one of the most suspenseful scenes in cinema history, built entirely on dread and the fear of exposure. Unlike triumphant space adventures, The Thing offers no clear victory. The ending is ambiguous. Two survivors sit in the snow, uncertain whether either is still human. There is no medal ceremony, no celebratory music, only uncertainty and cold. The practical effects were groundbreaking. Grotesque transformations unfold with shocking realism. The alien is not sleek or elegant. It is chaotic and grotesque, emphasizing the fragility of the human body. At its core, The Thing explores identity. If your face and voice can be copied perfectly, what makes you you? It strips science fiction down to primal fear. There is no empire to defeat, only survival. What once repelled audiences now stands as one of the most intense and uncompromising science fiction films ever created. When Children of Men arrived in 2006, it did not explode at the box office. It earned respectable numbers, but fell short of expectations given its budget and critical pedigree. Audiences seemed unsure how to approach it. The premise was bleak. Humanity had become infertile. No child had been born in 18 years. Society was collapsing not through alien invasion or galactic war, but through quiet hopelessness. And that quiet devastation is precisely what makes it extraordinary. Directed by Alfonso Cuarón, the film feels disturbingly plausible. Governments have not fallen overnight. They have hardened. Immigration camps resemble prison zones. Streets are patrolled by military forces. Television screens blare propaganda. The future is not shiny or distant. It feels like tomorrow morning. Theo, played by Clive Owen, is no chosen hero. He is a disillusioned bureaucrat drifting through a broken world. When he becomes responsible for protecting a miraculously pregnant woman, the film does not shift into triumphant fantasy. It becomes a desperate journey through urban warfare and human cruelty. The long, unbroken takes during ambushes and city battles create immersion rarely seen in science fiction. You are not watching spectacle. You are trapped inside it. The power of Children of Men lies in restraint. There are no elaborate space battles, no mystical forces guiding destiny. The miracle at its center is biological, a baby. That simplicity carries more emotional force than entire fleets of starships. When soldiers momentarily cease fire at the sound of an infant's cry, the moment feels sacred. It suggests that hope, fragile as it is, still exists. Unlike escapist adventure, this film confronts political anxiety head-on. Immigration, authoritarianism, environmental decay, and apathy are woven into its fabric. It does not reassure. It warns. Over time, critics and audiences alike have elevated it to modern classic status. Its influence can be felt in contemporary dystopian storytelling. More importantly, its emotional maturity sets it apart. It argues that the true threat to humanity is not an external empire, but internal collapse. Children of Men may not have dominated the box office, but its realism and urgency give it lasting weight. It feels less like fantasy and more like prophecy. Brazil was almost buried before audiences ever saw it. The studio fought director Terry Gilliam over the ending. Executives wanted a happier conclusion. Gilliam refused. Release delays and limited marketing damaged its financial prospects. When it finally reached theaters, its box office returns were modest. Many viewers found it strange and overwhelming. But Brazil is one of the boldest dystopian films ever made. Set in a retro-futuristic society ruled by suffocating bureaucracy, the film follows Sam Lowry, a low-level clerk whose life is dominated by paperwork and surveillance and endless forms. The future here is not dominated by flashy technology, but by inefficiency and absurd regulation. Air ducts snake through cramped apartments. Typewriters coexist with strange computer screens. It is both futuristic and archaic at the same time. Gilliam's vision is exaggerated, yet eerily familiar. The humor is dark and biting. A simple clerical error results in an innocent man's arrest and death. Government agencies shift blame with cold indifference. Individual identity is crushed beneath institutional machinery. Unlike heroic sagas of rebellion and victory, Brazil offers something more unsettling. Sam dreams of escape. He imagines himself as a winged warrior rescuing a woman from monstrous forces. But reality intrudes repeatedly. Fantasy becomes coping mechanism. The film's ultimate resolution refuses comfort. It is ambiguous and haunting. Visually, Brazil is relentless. Its production design is cluttered and oppressive. Every frame feels overstuffed with wires, ducts, and paperwork. The world is not sleek or triumphant. It is claustrophobic. The film also critiques consumer culture and cosmetic obsession. Characters undergo grotesque plastic surgeries in pursuit of superficial beauty, while society decays around them. The satire cuts deeply. Brazil failed to attract mass audiences because it demands engagement. It blends comedy, tragedy, and surrealism in ways that defy easy categorization. Yet its themes of surveillance and bureaucratic overreach resonate even more strongly today. It may not offer laser battles or mythic destinies. Instead, it offers something sharper. Or a warning disguised as absurdity. Dark City slipped into theaters in early 1998 with little fanfare. Its marketing was vague, its tone was difficult to categorize. Audiences expecting straightforward thrills were met with something far stranger. The film barely recovered its budget during its theatrical run and was overshadowed by massive releases, dominating the cultural conversation. For a time, it felt like it would disappear quietly into obscurity. Instead, it became one of the most respected cult science fiction films of its era. Directed by Alex Proyas, Dark City presents a world where the sun never rises. The city is trapped in eternal night. Buildings reshape themselves at midnight. Citizens awaken with no memory of their past. At the center is John Murdoch, a man accused of murder who slowly discovers that reality itself is being manipulated by mysterious beings known as the Strangers. Unlike traditional adventure narratives, Dark City questions the nature of identity. If your memories can be rewritten, are you still yourself? If personality can be engineered overnight, what does individuality mean? The Strangers experiment on humanity as if people are laboratory animals, rearranging their memories to study the human soul. It is a premise rooted not in rebellion fantasy, but in existential dread. Visually, the film is striking. Its architecture blends noir shadows with expressionist exaggeration. The city feels like a living organism. Streets twist and stretch. Towers grow unnaturally. The aesthetic influenced later science fiction films and remains instantly recognizable. The emotional weight of Dark City comes from its refusal to offer easy answers. Murdoch does not discover hidden lineage or destiny. He uncovers manipulation. His power emerges not from prophecy, but from understanding the same reality-bending abilities used by his captors. Many viewers have noted its thematic similarities to The Matrix, released 1 year later. Yet Dark City arrived first, exploring simulated existence and constructed reality with philosophical seriousness. It lacks flashy spectacle, but compensates with atmosphere and inquiry. What makes it arguably stronger than many mainstream sci-fi blockbusters is its commitment to ambiguity. It challenges viewers to confront unsettling ideas about free will and perception. There are no simple villains seeking domination. There are experimenters seeking understanding. A Dark City may not have achieved blockbuster status, but its intellectual ambition and haunting imagery ensure its legacy. It reminds us that science fiction can interrogate reality itself. Gattaca was not designed as spectacle. There are no vast battles or alien invasions. Its future is quiet, sterile, and eerily calm. Upon release, it struggled commercially, earning far less than its production cost. Audiences perhaps expected something louder. Instead, they received a restrained drama about genetic discrimination. Over time, it has become one of the most respected science fiction films of the late 20th century. Set in a society where genetic engineering determines social hierarchy, Gattaca follows Vincent Freeman, a naturally conceived child labeled genetically inferior. In this future, employers scan DNA at the door. Insurance companies calculate life expectancy with clinical precision. Identity is reduced to probability. Vincent refuses to accept his assigned fate. He assumes the identity of a genetically superior man to pursue his dream of space travel. The tension does not come from lasers or explosions. It comes from the fear of exposure. A stray eyelash or drop of blood could unravel everything. The film's strength lies in plausibility. Unlike distant galactic empires, this future feels achievable. Genetic testing already exists. The slippery slope toward eugenic hierarchy feels disturbingly real. That realism gives the story weight. Ethan Hawke's performance is understated and determined. Jude Law's character, Jerome, embodies the tragic irony of perfection, genetically engineered to succeed. He collapses under pressure. The film quietly dismantles the myth that biology guarantees destiny. Visually, Gattaca embraces minimalist design. Clean lines and muted tones create an atmosphere of controlled order. It is not flashy. It is precise. What elevates Gattaca beyond typical sci-fi entertainment is its moral argument. It insists that willpower and individuality matter more than engineered superiority. It explores prejudice through a futuristic lens without losing emotional intimacy. While mainstream science fiction often centers on external conflict, Gattaca focuses on internal resilience. It questions the ethics of technological advancement without preaching. Its themes feel increasingly relevant in an age of genetic editing. Gattaca may not have dazzled audiences on opening weekend, but its ideas endure. It stands as a thoughtful exploration of ambition and inequality, proving that quiet science fiction can leave a profound mark. When Solaris was released in 1972, it was often described as the Soviet response to 2001. That comparison both helped and hurt it. Western audiences expecting spectacle found something slower and more introspective. Distribution outside the Soviet Union was limited. Its pacing tested patience. For many viewers, it felt distant and difficult. but Solaris is one of the most emotionally profound science fiction films ever made. Directed by Andrei Tarkovsky and based on Stanisław Lem's novel, the film takes place aboard a space station orbiting a mysterious planet covered entirely by a living ocean. The scientists stationed there are unraveling psychologically. The planet appears capable of manifesting physical embodiments of their memories. Grief becomes flesh. Regret becomes presence. The protagonist, psychologist Chris Kelvin, arrives to assess the situation and is confronted by a living recreation of his deceased wife. The horror in Solaris is not monstrous transformation or violent threat. It is emotional exposure. The film asks whether human beings are capable of confronting their own guilt and longing when given a second chance. Unlike traditional space adventure narratives, Solaris is intimate. Much of its runtime is devoted to quiet conversations and lingering shots. Tarkovsky uses time itself as a narrative device. Silence is not empty. It is contemplative. The planet remains enigmatic. There is no clear explanation of its intelligence or motives. And visually, the film contrasts the sterile isolation of the station with lush memories of Earth. The imagery reinforces its central theme. Humanity may reach the stars, but it cannot escape itself. The true alien landscape is the human psyche. Solaris challenges the notion that science fiction must be driven by conquest or rebellion. It suggests that exploration of the universe inevitably leads to exploration of memory and conscience. There are no triumphant victories, only reflection. Over the decades, critics have elevated Solaris to canonical status. It remains a meditation on love and loss wrapped in cosmic mystery. Where some science fiction celebrates mythic destiny, Solaris confronts personal responsibility. It may not deliver spectacle, but it offers something rarer: emotional introspection within the infinite. Annihilation entered theaters in 2018 surrounded by uncertainty. Test screenings reportedly confused audiences. International distribution shifted quickly to streaming platforms. The box office performance was modest compared to its budget. Some viewers found its ambiguity frustrating, yet it stands as one of the most daring modern science fiction films. Directed by Alex Garland and adapted from Jeff Vandermeer's novel, the film follows a team of scientists entering a mysterious phenomenon known as the Shimmer. Inside this zone, biology refracts and mutates. Plants grow in human shapes. Animals merge with other species. Reality bends subtly rather than explosively. The film's power lies in atmosphere. The Shimmer is not an invading army. It is transformation itself. And each character confronts personal trauma as the environment mirrors their inner fractures. Natalie Portman's character, Lena, carries guilt and grief that manifest symbolically in the landscape. Unlike conventional blockbusters, Annihilation avoids clear exposition. The alien presence is neither clearly hostile nor benevolent. It simply alters. The now infamous bear sequence is terrifying not for spectacle alone, but for its psychological cruelty. It blends memory and predation into a single haunting image. The final confrontation in the lighthouse abandons traditional narrative structure. It becomes abstract and almost wordless. Movement replaces dialogue. The alien form mirrors Lena's gestures in a disturbing dance of identity. Annihilation explores self-destruction as a fundamental human impulse. Each member of the expedition harbors a desire for change that borders on annihilation of the self. The science fiction setting becomes a metaphor for psychological unraveling. While it lacked the mass appeal of franchise-driven spectacles, the film's intellectual boldness sets it apart. It demands interpretation. It refuses neat resolution. Annihilation proves that contemporary science fiction can still take risks. It does not aim for mythic clarity. It embraces uncertainty. In doing so, it delivers something both unsettling and unforgettable. When Blade Runner 2049 was released in 2017, industry analysts expected a prestige blockbuster. The budget was massive. The cast included major stars. The visual scale was immense. Yet the film struggled to justify its production cost at the box office, and many labeled it a financial disappointment despite respectable global earnings. Its deliberate pacing and adult tone limited mainstream appeal. What audiences received, however, was one of the most visually and philosophically ambitious science fiction films of the modern era. Directed by Denis Villeneuve, the sequel expands the original film's meditation on identity and memory. Officer K, a replicant tasked with hunting his own kind, begins uncovering evidence that challenges the established order. The narrative does not hinge on galactic conquest. It hinges on the possibility of artificial life achieving genuine humanity. The film is patient. Scenes breathe. Vast orange wastelands stretch across the screen. Neon cityscapes shimmer with oppressive beauty. Cinematographer Roger Deakins crafted imagery that feels monumental, yet intimate. Every frame is meticulously composed. Unlike traditional heroic narratives, Officer K's journey is one of quiet self-discovery. He believes he may be uniquely special. He believes he may be the fulfillment of a hidden miracle. The story carefully dismantles that expectation. His significance lies not in destiny, but in choice. That subversion deepens the emotional impact. The film also examines corporate power and commodified intimacy. Holographic companions blur the line between affection and programming. Memory designers create artificial pasts that shape identity. The question lingers: if a memory feels real, does it matter whether it truly happened? Blade Runner 2049 refuses to rush. It demands contemplation. It prioritizes atmosphere over explosive spectacle. That commitment likely limited its commercial reach, but strengthened its artistic integrity. In comparison to myth-driven space adventure, this sequel offers melancholy and nuance. It suggests that humanity is not defined by origin, but by compassion. It closes on sacrifice rather than celebration. Though financially underwhelming, Blade Runner 2049 stands as a modern epic. It proves that large-scale science fiction can remain intellectually rigorous and emotionally restrained. The Iron Giant arrived in 1999 with minimal marketing support. Despite glowing reviews, it struggled at the box office and failed to recoup its production budget during its initial theatrical run. For a time, it seemed destined to fade into obscurity. Instead, it became one of the most beloved animated films of its generation. Set during the Cold War, the story follows a young boy named Hogarth who befriends a massive alien robot that crashes near his small town. The government quickly views the giant as a threat. Fear escalates. Military force looms. What elevates the Iron Giant beyond typical family entertainment is its moral clarity. The giant is a weapon by design, yet he chooses not to be one. The film centers on free will rather than programming. A machine learns compassion from a child. That reversal carries powerful symbolism. The animation blends warmth with scale. The giant's towering presence is balanced by intimate human moments. Brad Bird's direction ensures that humor and heartbreak coexist seamlessly. Unlike spectacle-driven science fiction, this film focuses on character. The climactic act does not celebrate destruction. It condemns it. The giant's decision embodies the idea that identity is defined by choice, not origin. The emotional payoff remains devastating decades later. It speaks to pacifism and fear-driven paranoia without becoming preachy. The Cold War backdrop grounds its themes in historical anxiety. While other science fiction films chase grandeur, The Iron Giant achieves something equally lasting through simplicity. It tells a story about friendship, sacrifice, and moral agency. Though it failed commercially at first, its legacy endures through word of mouth and critical reevaluation. It stands as proof that science fiction can be tender without losing power. In the end, greatness is not always measured by opening weekend numbers. Sometimes it is measured by the depth of feeling it leaves behind. Some films win the box office, others win time. These so-called flops dared to think deeper, risk more, and challenge audiences instead of comforting them. While spectacle builds empires, ideas build legacies. And decades later, these films still ask harder questions than most blockbusters ever will.